Good morning.
Good morning. I have a story to tell.
Story. Okay.
So, as a lot of people who have been keeping up with us know, we got a new website. And I'm watching how people deal with change, using the new website as an example. And then that change is also happening in the world. So there's this one student that's been with us for a while, and we do a video, a tutorial, we explain, we warn far in advance this is happening, and we're there to answer your questions. And so this one person kind of freaks out, and even though he had the warnings, he couldn't navigate. And so we're going back and forth a number of times, and I'm watching him get more freaked out and upset. And I'm explaining things kindly, but he's coming to the change, the situation, from the place of his rational mind. It worked like this in the past, and I'm going to apply those principles to this new change situation, where, of course,
It doesn't
work. And so instead of just stepping back and letting his rational mind take a break and be patient and curious, he just plowed right ahead with lots of resistance and arguing and upset. And so many back and forth and long pause, and I don't hear from him for a while. And then all of a sudden, I check in a few days later, and I said, "How are you doing? Like, have you figured this out?" And I was much nicer than I am right now. Because now, in retrospect, it's really kind of funny. And he said, "Oh yeah, I figured it out."
I pushed the button that said on.
That's what I said. "Oh, this is really great. Tell me how you figured it out." He said, "Well, I finally just stopped. And I grounded, and I stepped away, and I just turned off my computer. And then when I came back, magically, it starts working." And fortunately, he recognized that it was him.
Uh-huh.
It was his resistance and his pushing against and arguing, and it's all your fault, and all the stuff he went through. As soon as he stopped that rational mind and pulled back and was patient and curious, it worked. So it's a amusing story, because changes are happening out there in the world. And so how do you deal with change?
Yeah. So it's amusing depending on at what point you are in that process. You know, if you're at the point where it's not working, and it's your fault, that's really frustrating. And unfortunately, that's where an enormous amount of people are on the planet. If you look at it really in a simple way, you had COVID, and it was supposed to pass, it didn't pass, and all of the disruption that brought, things are not going back to wherever they were. Mm-mm. And people who can't deal with that, or at least allow that to be a concept, are going to continue to have challenges. And there are many of them out there in the world. The flip side of it is like, wait, I didn't like my job, I didn't like how my circumstances were, I didn't like, which we heard before COVID all the time. You know, I don't like working at this, I'm not being paid enough, blah, blah, blah. That same person, in many cases, and we see them, hasn't paused to recognize, damn, this is really good. Now, lots and lots have paused and recognized, wow, I can stop doing these things. But there's a whole group there that hasn't said what's possible. And so they're even a little stuck. So this whole place that we're playing right now, it's really pretty fundamental. The brain does kind of two things. The brain sees a new circumstance, and it basically goes to its past to see what's familiar, to then make a decision. That's one side.
How can I fit this into my box?
Right. And very much rational mind, tell me what has happened in the past and what I'm doing. And then there's another part that basically says, I'm at an intersection, I've never seen it before, I don't have any references in my past, and okay, what do I do? Now that's the point that a lot of people are at right now, because it's basically this is scary. I don't know what to do. And it's as if they take a step back and then start to dig into the rational mind. But there's a fear, uncertainty. I don't know what to do.
So when you say they take a step back, you don't mean they step back to reassess the situation.
No.
In this context, you're saying they step back in fear.
Yeah, it's just like your example. I can't do it, it's not working, and I'm getting more frustrated, and it's obviously your fault, and it's the website's fault, and it's all you people's fault. And it's like, wait, you've had 4 years of using your tools, getting grounded, pausing, observing, choosing. But we forget all that when we go back into the rational mind to fix something that is new quite often. So the other side of that is the person who, and this is kind of the whole direction we're going, is, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to pause and I'm going to observe. I'm not going to choose, I'm not going to go into panic, and I'm not going to go into excitement. That the excitement is like, wow, I can do something different, but I'm just going to pause. And so it's in that pausing moment where the glass is half full, half empty type of thing. And how do I progress? What do I do now?
Well, and we've all been in that place like this person where it just grows. It's not working. You start to get frustrated, and pretty soon that energy just grows in your space and your rational mind, and you're arguing, and and so pausing has to be a really intentional action, because so much it's so likely that you're wound up in this whole energy that actually pausing, like you said, that's what's going to make it change. But how can I do that? I'm so wound up in this problem.
Yeah, for a lot of people, but particularly for people who have a spiritual orientation. I don't mean they want to be spiritual. They are. They come into the body with excitement, and you see that little kid who's just does everything, just tries everything, but the no and the don't and the stop, and then the what's wrong with you and why are you so stupid and you're never going to succeed, all that gets placed into that kid's space, and it creates doubt about myself. And so again, here's what Mastering Alchemy is all about. How do you clear that doubt about myself out? And that's what the tools are all about. But really right here, it's that place where so much is changing in the world. Being able to allow yourself to pause and not go into I don't know, and recognize I don't know. What are my choices? That's a huge piece of this point that we're playing in right now, is to simply allow an awareness, a pause, and then a choice. And the other part of that process, pause, allow, choose, is you could get an answer you're not looking for. It's like I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to do this, and it doesn't work. It's not a failure. It's just I went over here and I pushed the door, and the door didn't open. They told me it was going to open. It didn't open. But they didn't say push, and they didn't say pull. You just happened to push, and it's not a push door. So if you can step back and go, well, it's the right door, let me try something different. And so but many people go in to see it failed, it didn't work.
The door is broken, it's not opening.
Right. And they fall back into they told me I wasn't smart, and I guess they're right. So there's a lot of motion right now in that aspect of shifting from that rational mind, stepping back into fear and doubt and uncertainty, to a place where what's beginning to happen is pretty remarkable if you can pause, allow, and then realize, I could try this. And then allow it to not be the correct choice, not a wrong choice, just simply pause again.
There's an old-fashioned saying, I'm trying to access it, when something like stop, look, and listen. I don't know if that's used at all, but that's the point. When you're at an intersection, you just don't go barreling into the street. You might get hit by a bus, so you stop and you look and you listen. And so that would apply here.
Very much.
Whether it's a new website or war or an illness or any of these big changes that are happening, just stop.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who are stuck in the past. I don't say that negatively. In the past that they're stuck in, well, it used to be like this, and you got to look around and wait, like you're saying, but I had a long period of time. You don't have a long period of time.
Right.
You know, if you go back into history, all these massive changes in terms of fire and then harvester for agriculture, and then, but every one of them had an experience, had a launching, and then the time for acceptance and engagement got shorter and shorter. Just look at the computer, and then look at the iPhone, and now look at some of these new AIs that are coming out. The time of adoption and in using is beginning to be smaller and smaller. That's extremely threatening to the person who says, well, wait, I'm not sure, and I'm just going to sit back here and not be engaged in life.
It's like, we talked about this a little bit the other day, where when I was art director at DuPont in the early 90s, maybe, there were a lot of, it was in the engineering department, and there were a lot of men who were there who had been there for 20 years, 30 years.
Yep, same thing.
And they were engineers where they used blueprints
and slide rules
and ink on a drawing tool, and beautiful pieces of art they'd created. But around the time I came in, computers came into the office. And so here are these 30-year-old people playing with computers and getting done in one day what it would take weeks for this guy to do. And so that's another example of this change is happening that we really don't have any control over. How am I going to respond to it?
Yeah. And you see it in generations already. I mean, you had the baby boomers, and then you have the Gen X group, and then you have the millennial types, and now you got the Gen Z groups. And boy, each one of those, their reality is compressing and compressing and compressing. And for one generation has no clue about the other generation. Right. So something pretty remarkable is happening. But that pause and observe, choose, and then act is really huge. The rational mind and a larger set, we'll talk about this another time, about how do you think? Thinking happens in different layers. It doesn't just happen here. So once you understand how thinking happens, you have a different way of absorbing what's in front of you. But it's an interesting place where that same student is getting more frustrated. But again, let's go back to mastering alchemy. Here's the tools. Can I begin to define myself, get in the center of my head, be grounded, and allow myself to observe, to pause, observe, and then choose?
Well, and that's what he did. He finally untangled himself from the upset.
Yeah.
And turned off the computer and sat back and grounded and like, oh, okay, get into a good feeling place. He turns on the computer. Magic. It happens.
Yeah. And I think it's a simple lesson to learn, except it's not easy.
Yeah.
And we keep saying simple is not necessarily easy. And right now, that place of change over this next couple of years, I mean, literally couple of years, it's going to turn upside down.
Yeah.
It's not, well, let's watch the next 20 years. It's next, 2 years, life is going to be very different. So taking a moment to pause and observe, reflect to get perspective if necessary, but recognize, I don't know what this is in front of me, not a problem. I'm going to pause, choose, and then determine it.
Yeah, good.
So, yeah.